Everything is showing properly then. It's always goofy with two monitors. So let's jump into this. The way the first hour is going to be the elements of the pitch. And then the second hour is going to be given time for those people that want to actually practice. And we will give feedback to those people that participate. So really, first and foremost, this is a safe zone, a safe environment where everybody is good enough, but nobody is too good. So check your egos at the door. This is just a time to just put yourself out there, lean into the discomfort, and it's the only way that you're going to get better. So a little bit about myself so that you know who I am and why you should even listen to me. I've been working with startups for the last 9 years. Started my business in April, it'll be 9 years ago, working with early stage startups and small businesses the entire time. I was one of the founding people that started Start Peninsula. And coincidentally enough, it's also the 9th year for Start Peninsula. I then moved on, started the Launchpad. That was the business incubator in Williamsburg. From there, I just last year and a half, I became the executive director for Startwheel, and Startwheel is an organization to better consolidate and coordinate the entrepreneurial efforts taking place across Hampton Roads. So definitely leverage Startwheel. And then most recently started angel investing myself. So I share all that just to say that I've been working with early stage companies for a long time, and then I've transitioned to the investor side. So I have seen the full spectrum from top to bottom. So I feel like I can lend some valuable information to you all. And then we have Gary Plaag. Gary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Welcome, everybody. My name is Gary Plaag, and Tim and I have been working together for the past 6 or so years, I think. And my background is that I've had my own business since 1998. I have a communications consulting business. So I work with people on their interpersonal and business communication skills, which includes things like presentations and pitches and how you express yourself and tell your story and get people interested in listening to it. And the big thing for me that I really enjoy being in this space with Tim is that when I started my business, there was no help. I just cold turkey quit a job and started my business, and I had to learn as I went, and there was no one to help you. And now there are people to help you. So I like to be one of the people that's available to help, and that's why I like being part of this whole thing. So you're gonna hear from me during this the rehearsal or the class as well tonight, and I'll jump in here and there. Tim will be the lead, and then I'll jump in to put in some additional things and explain some other things that might be performance-based or whatever. So welcome.
Yeah, and we, the two of us, we balance each other out really well. So myself from the business side, Gary from the performance side. So you may not realize it or not, but your pitch is a performance, and performances are either remembered for good or they're remembered for bad. And we're here to make sure it's remembered for the good reasons. So let's jump in. So like I said, we're going to put 3 minutes on the clock. You're going to be asked to pitch, and everyone is going to be prepared. Because the first thing that they're going to do, whether if it's on Zoom or if it's in real life, they're going to look out, they're going to see a panel of judges or a panel of investors, and this is your time to shine. You've been working really hard up to this point, we hope, and the last thing that we want is for you to have an experience where you just lose your cool, you forget what you're going to say, and then you crash and burn. So we're here to avoid that from happening. And really the way that we do this, I mean, we're going to take a little trip back down grade school, middle school, and we're going to break down the elements of a 3-minute pitch. And we're going to do that by creating an outline. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about an attention getter. No one is going to pay attention to you until you give them a reason to pay attention. So One of the things that you'll quickly recognize, anybody that did not attend Pitch Perfect, they're going to start by saying, hi, my name is Tim, and then they're going to go off into their pitch. But we're suggesting to get on the pathway to being rememberable, start with your 10-second attention getter. We'll go into detail for all these. So if you have any questions, just hang tight and I'm sure that we'll address them. So you talk about having your attention getter that's 10 seconds long, then we get into the problem or the opportunity. Just estimating 50 seconds. This is not science, or this is not a recipe from a cookbook. This is just an outline, just to give you some guidelines in terms of how long that you have. Let's break this thing down just like an elephant. We'll take it one bite at a time. So talk about your problem and your opportunity. Then you can talk about your solution. Take some time there, 50 seconds or so. Now we have your attention. People are like, wow, I totally identify with this problem. This is the person that is going to solve this problem. Then you talk about who you are, your name, and then you can jump into your target market. So people are like, wow, I totally want to jump on board and support this company. Who is it that you're going after? Your target market for 50 seconds. And at that point, we got about 15 seconds for a close. And during that time, it's a great opportunity for you to talk about any needs that you may have, that you're looking to hire, you're looking for, whatever the case is. This is, we're going to talk about this quite a bit during this session, but this is a time to be vulnerable. There's so many people that are going to want to help you, but if you don't put yourself and make yourself vulnerable, then no one's going to know how to help you. So talk about the things that you'll need. You'll be amazed. But right there, that's your 3 minutes. And the ultimate goal is you want them to make them want more. You're not there to close the deal on the very first pitch, the very first meeting. The idea is, let's get to that second meeting. In the purpose of, or the case of Start Peninsula, that second meeting is the final event, so that you advance in November for the $5,000 in seed funding. Make sense? Anything to add, Gary?
Yeah, one thing to think about is that we've listed these things of how much time you want to spend. And this is just what, from my observations, the way that if this was live, it would be different in the way that you would enter the stage and the way that you would carry yourself. Well, this is on Zoom. And it still matters the way that you enter the thing. If you're fumbling around and acting like this is a new thing for you, and you're not all together, or you can't get your PowerPoint or whatever your visuals are to work, then the judges are noticing that. And anybody that's in the audience is watching that and thinking, well, if this person doesn't even have that together, this is equivalent to going to an interview without your shoes polished. You kind of, well, if this person didn't even do that, or they have a typo on their resume, how good is this? Are they at a problem solving in this business they're going to have? So that's just something to think about before we even get into the actual performance aspects of this. But how you show up at this event and the way that you enter into before you even say a word is really, really important. So
awesome. Thanks, Gary. So some things to consider. So we're going to get into what goes into the pitch. And we're going to talk about the product. And it's the idea and the innovation behind the product. Some things to consider that you're going to want to talk about. Is the problem big enough? You want to make sure that your total addressable market is something that is going to be worth solving. Are you solving the problem for 1 billion people? Or are you solving the problem for 10? In a situation like this, you want to make sure that you're solving the problem that is big enough, that is worth solving. How are you going to differentiate yourself? Everybody has competition. If you want the kiss of death, tell a bunch of investors or judges that you have zero competition, and you'll discredit yourself in a hurry. So how do you differentiate yourself? If you want to change someone's behavior, I mean, the rule of thumb is you want to be 10 times better than your competitor. So how are you 10 times better? And how much better is it? Again, how do you differentiate yourself? Are you cheaper? Are you better? Are you faster? What is the case, and how much better is it? But it is all about the product. I mean, this is when you look at Apple, or you look at Peloton, or you look at Tesla, all of these, I mean, the product design, that is everything. It is very, very clear that they put a ton of time into the product, and those companies are rocket ships. So how do you, and we'll get into how you get that beautiful product here in a little bit. But those are the things that you want to talk about in terms of what the idea and the innovation is. Clearly, we're talking about the solution at this point. What we have found is that people are very long-winded when it comes to talking about the problem. But when it comes to talking about the solution, people are really, really weak and light. So these are some things that you can talk about.
Yeah, can I jump in one more thing?
Yep.
So one thing in this space, when you're talking about, when Tim says you need to show how you differentiate yourself, to come in and say that it's really complicated and you just have to believe me will not work. If you come in and say, I have this new mousetrap, and people in the audience go, well, I have mousetrap and it works just great, then you got to tell them why your mousetrap is better. And is it because your mousetrap resets itself? Because if you spring a mousetrap, it only does it once and you got to go reset it. But if your mousetrap automatically resets, reloads a piece of cheese, and is ready for the next mouse that comes, ejects the dead mouse and is ready for the next one, then that's a better product, And some people fail to see that. They just think, I've worked so hard on this and I really believe in this product, and they're really deep in the weeds on it. But you got to be able to help normal people understand what your product or service is and why it's different, and why it's different than the other 100 things that are already on the market. So yeah. I say that because whenever Tim and all of us watch pitch competitions, then we always see people who never do this. They don't say why their thing is better or why it's different. And so real life experience tells us that you need to be able to do that. So that might mean pulling yourself out of your inventor mode and really looking at it. I always used to say when I worked in IT that my mother never understood what I did. And so it always had to pass the mom test. If it could pass the mom test, it was probably going to be understandable by most people. And so whatever your product or service is, make sure that it passes the mom test so that anybody's mom would get it pretty quickly, because you only have 50 seconds to really explain that. So go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I appreciate you expanding on that, Gary, because that's really what I was talking about in terms of like Peloton. I mean, it's like stationary bikes have been around forever. So why are people dropping all this money for a Peloton and then paying a monthly subscription fee? It's because the product is so good and it is so much better that people are willing to spend the money and continue to spend the money. So thank you, Gary. So we're going to move on to marketability. So we got problem, we got the solution, then we talked about the market. Some things that we're going to things to consider here is identifying your customer. And this stuff it's going to sound really obvious in many cases, but I mean, it is so important, and you have to demonstrate your understanding of the size of the target market. So you want to narrow this down as narrow as you possibly can, and then narrow it down some more. That part is not very intuitive. So if you think about it, if you look at it from a Facebook standpoint, if you have limited marketing budget, and someone says, hey, I want you to place a Facebook ad for your product, you're not just going to send it to anybody on Facebook and Instagram. You want to try to narrow that down to age, location, people that like this product, or however narrow you can get that to be and then start. I mean, so many people will start to pitch and they're going to say, oh, everybody wants our product, but no, you've got to start somewhere. And the more narrow that you can start, the better. You're going to learn from that core audience, and then you can slowly expand to have a wider and wider and wider market. And then if things go right, you're a national brand or a global brand. Any unique characteristics of what your market is. And like I said, the smaller focus, the better. I mean, you just really want to show the command of how well you know it. I mean, so it's like we're building on everything here. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. These are the people that are going to want the solution. I mean, again, you're priming the pump so that you can get that second meeting, because the investors or the judges are like, yep, I'm buying into this. I want to hear more. Let's keep going. The thing is,
can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't know if we were going to save questions to the end, but I just have a question about the market piece.
Mm-hmm.
From your vantage point, is there a market size to be thinking about? X number of potential customers, 10,000 plus, or?
Yeah. However you want to define that, whether if it's in terms of people, the dollar amount, like a housing market size is X. But then even from a housing market, I mean, is it, can you narrow that down by type of house, single family condo? There's X amount of people that live in a $350,000 to $400,000 home, whatever the case is. But yeah, however you can best define that to show that you know the topic.
From an investor point of view, is there a way to back into that where you think, well, we're looking for, companies to have this much equity value in the marketplace, and then sort of backing, you know what I mean, to sort of size the market to get a sense on, how many people am I looking for here?
I mean, I guess I understand what you're saying, but it's a matter, but at the same time, you don't necessarily, I mean, you have to have a path of terms of first step, second step, third step, like your roadmap in terms of where you want to go. And then, the market's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And from an investor standpoint, at least my personal take is I want to invest in someone that has a clear path that, hey, the total addressable market is this, but we're going to start here. And then we're going to slowly grow into the total addressable market. All right. So you have this idea, who you're going to market. I can tell you that I hear lots of great ideas almost multiple times a day. And even one of the most popular questions that we get regarding Start Peninsula is, what if someone steals my idea? People are going to sign NDAs. How do I protect it? Well, no, we don't do NDAs. No, we're not worried about people stealing your idea. No, it's just a non-starter. And the reason being is because everything comes down to execution. You have to show that you are the people and the team that is going to execute the idea. It is all about the execution. How are you going to make this thing a reality? I mean, investors invest in the people. They don't invest in the idea, because at the end of the day, you need to invest in that person that no matter what, they are so passionate about solving that problem that they are going to make it a reality. I mean, it's just because that's why if I'm interviewing somebody or listen to someone, hey, how did you stumble on this idea? Why are you going to do it? And if someone was like, dude, there's so much money you can make from this idea, it's like, I'm out. Because as soon as times get tough, because they're going to get tough, and then the next opportunity comes along that it also offers a large payout opportunity, then you're going to pivot, you're going to switch, and you're going to go after that idea. I want someone that is so passionate that no matter what, they're going to solve that problem. And that comes down to knowing what your why is. It's a tough road. And if you don't understand why you're doing it, then it's going to make it even a tougher road. So the days that are dark and the days that you don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning, you need to understand your why. You need to surround yourself with like-minded people. That's why when it comes to a business, another thing, I like businesses with co-founders, because if you have a single founder and one gets hit by the proverbial bus, or one decides to back out, I want to make sure that there's someone else that can take the reins and move forward. So I cannot stress enough understanding what your why is.
Can I jump in on that too, Tim?
Yep.
2 examples, and it's someone that I met early not early in my career, but when I moved to the Peninsula area. And you hear stories about people that have their passion and their business, and they actually have employees, and they sleep in their car on the night before payroll is due, trying to figure out how they're going to make payroll, because they have nothing left. That's people that are passionate. This isn't a dainty walk through the park. This is real life, and it's really hard sometimes. And I know when I started my business, I quit my pretty lucrative job in the corporate world, and I decided to do this. And I called my parents and I told them, and they said, "We will not give you any money because we had our own business, and you need to prove that you can do it yourself." And they said, "We'll always feed you. You're welcome to come and eat, but we're not going to give you any money." And that was the best thing ever. It sounded really horrible at the time, but they were right, because I did whatever I had to do because I was passionate about making this work. So Tim is exactly right. You got to have the passion in your why to make it work, because otherwise it's too easy to back out. So you're either, wanting to do something is uncommitted, and willing to do something is a huge commitment, and knowing it's going to be painful at various times. So that's why Tim's right. No one's going to take your idea, because most people are not willing to put in all the hard work that's going to be required. So go ahead, Tim.
Cool. Thank you. So what's the key to execute your idea? It's all going to come down to your team. And again, we touched on it in the sense of having a co-founder, having somebody there to help you. So some things to consider when you're talking about your team is this is where you want to showcase your strengths. I will never forget. It was 2 or 3 years ago at Start Peninsula. Someone was pitching some sort of like drone type of idea concept, and it was at the end of he was done, and it was not very memorable. Clearly, the only thing that I remember is this part here. So he didn't attend Pitch Perfect and didn't listen and didn't know any better about this. But one of the judges asked a question, and he was like, "Oh, well, I have a PhD in avionics. I've worked at NASA my whole life, and so I know all this technology like the back of my hand." And it's just like, dude, you didn't think about like sharing this in your pitch? I mean, it totally would have changed the entire outcome. So showcase your strengths. What does your team bring to the table? I mean, these are you're telling investors and judges, that you're going to make this happen. So they should have no doubt that you are the person and you're the team that's going to solve this problem. I cannot stress it enough. Anything you want to add, Gary?
Nope, I'm good.
Cool. We'll get into the investability aspect. I mean, this is just some extra stuff. I mean, it's just in terms of things to consider. The in vogue thing is to say that you're raising money. Tons of people are raising money right now. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, just being straight up truthful with you all is an investment necessary. The analogy that I use with everyone is once you take on an investment, it's the equivalent of jumping you jump on a treadmill, you set a treadmill at 10 and you start running as fast as you can. You're not allowed to jump off because the investors want a return. So yeah, I mean, can you bootstrap this thing? The more equity that you own in your company in the long run, the better off you're going to be anyway. So, the more, it's just, you don't necessarily have to invest is really what I'm getting at. Making sure that you understand why you need the investment. With this money, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And that X, Y, and Z is this how the money is going to be used. And then, being able to tell the investors how they're going to, how are you going to make their money? Investors it's just one of those things. Not every investor is going to be the right investor for you. Once you take out money, then, that's a marriage, and you're going to be with that person for 6 or 7 years at a minimum. And the only way that an investor is going to get that money back is through acquisition or an IPO, unless you raise other money to buy that person's share. But you need to have a relationship in terms of understanding what that investor is going to expect. What is their timeline? Not all expectations are the same. So you need to make sure that you're on the same page when it comes to seeking capital. We touched on this in terms of basic needs. So we're rounding third, heading on into home in terms of what your needs are. Things to consider there. And I touched on this. If you don't share what you need, then people don't know how they can help. It's so important. The vulnerability aspect is really, really important. I can't stress enough. I say it at least once a day that hire people that are smarter than you, hire people that fill gaps. If you do nothing but hire people that are just like you, that are not as smart as you, then you're not filling any voids. Your company's not getting any better. It's not getting any smarter. So to me, I see strength when someone says, "Hey, I don't know this, and I need someone that can help me with that," and being able to showcase that. So tricks of the trade. This is where we're at. Practice, practice, practice. Cannot stress that enough. It sounds so obvious, but it's also so obvious when people don't do it. And you'll hear a lot of people like downplaying a pitch, but it is so important. It sets the stage for everything. Every single meeting that you have from here on out, this is the groundwork for it. Touched on this in the very beginning, I'm one bullet ahead. Don't start with a question, especially when you're at a timed event, especially if you're on Zoom. Again, like when I say practice, 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 it just comes out of just total habit. And it just has anybody ever had a situation where they went outside, it was raining and they forgot their umbrella? You see it happen all the time. And the thing is, like with Zoom, we do everything now on a webinar. The audience cannot answer you back. So all you're doing is just chewing up time. You're wasting valuable seconds, especially when it comes to 3 minutes, because you only can fit so many words in a pitch in the course of 3 minutes. So don't start with a question. Don't start with your name. They don't care yet. We want to put the hook out there, and we want to get them listening. The big thing is, and I do this a lot with folks, delete anything that is irrelevant to your story. Because people get nervous and they just start to babble. The other thing for the folks that are technical, people with technical ideas are the worst when it comes to this, because they feel that maybe they haven't socialized their idea yet. They feel a little insecure about product market fit. So then all of a sudden they go into this mode where I'm going to talk about the nuts and bolts of this technology on why it's so good. But everything is flying completely over the audience's head. The judges have no idea what you're talking about. And you've totally lost everyone. And you just blew it. So really thinking about what is relevant to your story. Elon Musk, I think the talk said it like either a fourth grade or a sixth grade level. He's arguably the smartest person on the planet. I mean, the dude, his dreams are smarter than I can ever think about being. It's both a story and a performance. I mean, and we always talk about weaving a story in with this, and and really what a story being a use case. How does someone use this product? As you tell this story, and people are listening to this, they're putting themselves in the place of this person. And like Uber's first pitch, they talked about imagine you're at a Golden State Warriors game. You're with some friends. You've had too much to drink. You don't want to drive home. Wouldn't it be great if you could just push a button on your phone and then a car would come and pick you up? I mean, it's just like they didn't get into the nuts and bolts about how the technology works and all of that stuff. It was a use case on how the product works, and that's memorable. So it's a story and a performance. For every slide or line that you have, you need to ask, does it enhance the story? And does it detract from the story? So it's going to do one of the two things. You're either adding to the performance or you're taking away from it. And if it's detracting from the story, then it needs to come out. This is the movie trailer. We want people to go see the movie, so to speak. Looking ahead, as you progress, you get that second meeting or you advance in November. Demos, they're okay. However, screenshots are going to be better because at this stage, you likely have an MVP at best, a minimal viable product. So rather than risking something going wrong with a demo, screenshots capture everything that it needs to capture, and there's not the fear of, is this thing going to work or not? And with a call to action, you can sign up for updates here. You can join our newsletter if you want to be an alpha tester, some sort of call to action so that you can continue to keep your audience engaged and build your customers. If someone steps up, set expectations, you're going to follow up with that person. I mean, it's crazy to me how often I offer to help and then not hear anything from people. And it's like, well, they didn't really want it after all. So I just had more time to spend with other people. And I mentioned at the beginning that 3-minute pitch with a 2-minute question and answer period. This thing is the Q&A. It has happened several times. It can make or break you, especially in a pitch competition type of setting. I've seen companies advance because of the Q&A, and I've seen companies not get through because of Q&A. And if I remember right, that was almost the case or was the case in the first micro pitch. During the Q&A, you want to engage your audience. And you want to show that you have command of the subject. I mean, it's so important because this is the deal, everybody. During your Q&A, you're either gaining or you're losing credibility based on your response. So, I mean, if you are really succinct and you have confidence and you answer the question, answer it, move on, get to the next question, especially when you only have 2 minutes to answer these questions. And that's gaining credibility. But if you start droning on and on and on, and you didn't have a chance to answer the question, it just sounds, you're taking away your credibility. And it sounds like you don't know and you're just trying to blow smoke. So can't stress that enough, especially the more and more that I see this with this new format with Start Peninsula.
Tim, can I add something onto the Q&A?
Yep.
One thing that we observe, so that you all understand, is 2 minutes for Q&A. That doesn't start until that time doesn't start until you begin to answer the questions. So you'll finish your pitch, and then the judges will each ask one question of you, and you'll need to write those down or somehow take notes on those. So each judge will ask you one question. And then when you start talking, you have 2 minutes to answer those 3 questions. In the last pitch competition, some people answered those questions in a minute. Great. And now they had a minute left. and they just sat there. Well, this is your opportunity. If you left something out of the pitch that you think is relevant and should be known, and it was just an extra, just in case you had some more time, or you got a little verbose in your pitch and you didn't get to finish, this would be a chance for you to come back if you had extra time in the Q&A to use that time to address something that you may have not been able to cover. So this thing is all about you being, this is why it comes back to Tim's point about practicing. They always say, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And it's practice, practice, practice. So you want to practice the pitch itself, and you want to practice the Q&A. And Tim and I are happy if you want to run a pitch by us and do it live with us, and we will ask you really hard questions. And it would be way better for us to ask you really hard questions before you're in the pitch competition. And even get friends of yours who know the kinds of questions that will scare you to death, and have them write those down, and then practice those. Set your phone up, video record yourself, take the question out of a bag or something and answer the question, and then go back and watch yourself answer it, so that you know what the judges are going to see whenever you get a stumper question or you're answering a question that you really know well. So all of that to say, these are experiences that we've all had as we've watched these things for 7-8 years. And the Q&A should not be something that you take lightly. It's important. It's just as important to rehearse that as you do the regular pitch for it. Also, I'm gonna put a thing in the chat for you all. I'm gonna send it there now. And it's just a motivated sequence of persuasion that you could use to think about how you might put your things together as we go through this. And I'll just go over, if everybody see them in the chat. So 1, gain the audience's attention. 2, identify the problem. 3, identify your solution. Number 4, explain how life changes for people if they adopt your solution. And then number 5, as Tim mentioned, call to action. What do you need the audience to do now that they've learned about your product or your service? So along with all the things we've shared with you, these 5 motivation steps are run your stuff through that test as well. Have I gained the audience's attention? Have I really identified my problem? Have I proposed a solution? Have I explained how life changes if you adopt my solution? And finally, what do I need from the audience? Tell them what you're looking for. I'm looking for X amount of money to do this because the next phase is this, and this is what I particularly need right now in the development. So I offer that as help.
Yep. Yeah, one thing also that I like to add, and this is just bonus material, is in terms of like the Q&A, in practice, you should be practicing this in front of as many people as you possibly can. And when you're done, you should be, every single question that is asked, you should be writing that down and keeping a ledger of what questions were asked. And that will start to identify trends that I might have a hole in my pitch somewhere that everybody asks the same question. So then you address that question before it's even asked. Because what happens, and so I was on a investor demo day earlier today, and this company pitched. And the funny thing, so this is another lesson learned that I meant to add to the slides tonight. The only question that was asked, I'm in a syndicate with Jason Calacanis. He was the third person to invest in Uber and Robinhood and Calm. The only question he asked, he was like, "Can you explain the math on that slide?" Yeah, as soon as you put the numbers up, I started doing the math, and the numbers don't equate to me. How did you come up with that number? So if you're going to have math on your slide and you're going to start coming up with like a cost breakdown, or a break-even analysis type of thing, you need to make sure that your math is right, because once you bring up something that people like have like some sort of a shadow of a doubt, or they don't necessarily, it's not right, then they're not listening to you anymore. They're just totally trying to figure out how did they come up with this calculation and so again, you're either adding credibility or you're taking away your credit, you're discrediting yourself. So list all those questions down and make sure that you have those right. And then the other added bonus there is, as you're talking to different investors, keep track of who those investors are. Get their name, get their email address. Keep an Excel spreadsheet of who those people are as well. And then once a month or once a quarter, send an email update to those people. It's not necessarily if they just said flat out no. You might be too early. You might be missing a key piece. And then once you add that piece, then they're ready to invest. They may want you to find one other investor before they decide to jump in. You don't know. But if you can keep a growing list of everyone that you talk to, and you send them updates, just a monthly update, super quick. It doesn't have to be long. This is my wins for the month or the quarter. These were the challenges that we had. And this is where I need help. And you keep them engaged. And before you know it, you string some of these wins together and you're off to the races. And that's how you can contact us. That's how you can follow along with everything that's going on. We really hope that you, if you haven't registered to pitch, please do. Start Peninsula's got a lot of, I couldn't be more proud of the companies that have come out of Start Peninsula. We're at, I think that we exceeded like 16 million of funding at this point. Buskey Hard Cider, if you've seen that around, they pitched the very first Start Peninsula. No idea about hard cider or how to do anything with it. Just had an idea, and now they're the second largest cidery. We had a Shark Tank winner, who got to deal with Mark Cuban and Lori Grenier. A lot of companies move on to accelerators, and like I said, a lot of money has been raised. So this is the place to validate your idea. If anything at all, it will tell you if you should dump all your life savings and time into it before doing so.
Yeah, and go ahead if you want, grab the take a screenshot of this or whatever, so that you can see how to get a hold of me or Tim, and we're always happy to schedule you in if you want to do you want some coaching on it, whatever. So feel free to just take a screenshot and you have our stuff.
Yep. People literally will send us recordings of them and their pitch. They'll send transcripts. Whatever. We're happy to do it.
And one other thing that would be helpful for you too is, and I see Christine's raised her hand. So if you hang on one sec, in that, sometimes there's a lot of questions about what is that attention getter. Tim's already said asking questions eats up time. In a regular presentation where you're not being timed, yeah, that's a great way to start a thing, is to ask a question. And you could ask a hand-raised question, or you could ask a rhetorical question. That'd be fine. In this timed event, it takes too much time. So you don't want to do that. But other ways that you can grab the audience's attention, you could use a quote of some kind, a short one that really gets people's head into that space of what you're going to be talking about. You could do an imagine this scenario where people are imagining. I remember, Tim, we talked about this last Pitch Perfect, but there was a guy that had an app it was called Answers Now. And it was and the example they used was your kid has a meltdown, your kid has autism, you're in Kmart or Walmart, kid has a meltdown and nobody knows what to do, and it's drawn a huge audience and you don't know what to do, and you could push your phone, this app, it would connect you right away to a therapist that could help you with how to work through this. So that imagine this scenario took all of 20 seconds and everybody could relate to that. Other choices you have, you could use a startling statistic of some kind. This is X number of whatever does this, and it's only going to increase. And you don't necessarily scare people, but you could use startling statistics that might do that. And yeah, so there's all kinds of ways that can be done in those 20 seconds to gain attention and to get people's heads into the space. Because you got to remember, in this pitch competition, you might be number 9 out of 10 people. And that means that 8 other people have filled the judges' heads with their great idea. How do you cleanse them? How do you cleanse those minds so that they're ready to hear yours? And that attention getter is why you're doing that. Why, when you go to a live theater, if it's a musical, what do they do after you've fought your way through traffic? You've paid for exorbitant amount for parking. You finally find a parking space. You run to the theater. You get in. You get whatever you're going to have. You find your seat. It's a musical. You've paid $150 a ticket. You sit down, and what do? They play an overture of all the music that's going to happen in the show, and they drop the lights to half, and they get you in the mood for the musical. They don't expect you to run from your car and be ready to live in the fantasy of this show. They prepare you for it, and that's what the attention getter does as well. Prepares you for what you're now going to talk about for 3 minutes and answer questions for 2. So. And I can give you more ideas, and I'm pretty clever about thinking up pretty cool attention getters, because I'm not in your business and my head isn't full of your stuff. So I go, gosh, I don't get it, but I would get it if you said this. And so feel free to ask for those kind of things. Run them by me and Tim. Happy to do that. So. Oh, and Christine has a question. Oh, not anymore.
No, thank you. I figured it out.
Okay.
Any other questions? Happy to. This is the uncomfortable time where if people don't have questions and they're too afraid to pitch, that we just stare at each other for a few minutes.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So it's kind of goes away from the 3-minute pitch, but if you're looking up investors or firms online and they ask for you to send them your pitch, like which deck do you send them? Because I have multiple decks. I have like a long version of who we are for people that, really need the nuts and bolts. And then I have like the 5-pager. So, I mean, which one do you think is best if I'm actually like submitting it via email?
And have you met with them or pitched them yet? See, me personally, I would try to get a meeting. Try to get a meeting with them first, and then you get a better feel in terms of, because here's the thing is that every time you meet somebody, everyone's going to want something different, and that's when it comes down, like even like the whole business plan thing. I mean, all that stuff just makes me kind of crazy because no one ever reads it, and it's an easy way to say no. Oh, send me your business plan, and then you don't ever hear from someone again, and they sure as heck don't read it. But it's just like even when it comes to business, if you can meet that person face to face when you're giving them that proposal, I mean, it's just so much easier to like close or at least establish that next step. Because otherwise it's so difficult to, I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question, but I mean, business.
So I feel like I eat, sleep, and breathe this. So let's say like there's no contact information on their site other than submit your pitch through the submission form, but I could find them on LinkedIn or Twitter. Do you recommend like just like a cold, hey, this is who I am. Here I am.
To me, it's just, I guess I work my network in ways that, I'm just always hustling. I've just never, I'm just not a huge fan of the cold email, just in the sense of even if it's like some strategery that it's like, hey, let me do a LinkedIn search and we have this second level connection, and kind of ease in there to just I'll play chess as opposed to playing checkers, and see how I can work things that way. But that's just me. I mean, at the same time, I mean,
Yeah, I'll jump in here on this one. So I'll tell you a story. So I have a friend from college who wanted to be a writer. He wanted to write novels, and he would write these novels and he'd ask his wife to read them, and she would just hand them back to him and say, keep trying. And, he was like in the basement, had a regular business doing other stuff. And he would just be the basement writer dad on Saturday or Sunday morning. And so he finally writes one and he gives it to his wife, and she says, wow, this is great. And she's got tears in her eyes after she finishes reading it. And she says, yeah, I think this would be good. So he sends it off to 23 publishers, didn't know any of them, cold sent it off, got 22 rejections. This is garbage. We have no interest in your book. Weeks go by after that. He's devastated. Phone rings one Friday night. It's a publishing house. Love your book. Want to offer you $500,000 for your book. And he's like, what? But I think he was probably so depressed after 22 no's. And now they call him and say, would you write us another book? I think he's written 20 some of them. And it's just like, but the cold thing is so hard. I agree with Tim. In my business, if I can get in front of the client, I can usually sell the gig. If I just send into a cold call, I'm probably not going to do very well. Part of me wants to tell you to look for pitch competitions where you're not just a number that sends in a thing, because you'll never get any feedback either about what you did well or why they didn't like it. And so, it's like that job interview is always easier to get when you got a warm intro. Hey, my cousin's neighbor's brother's wife works at this place. And you go, oh, and somebody kind of knows you. So I guess I would look for competitions where you can certainly do the other ones, but I think you're going to get depressed. I mean, it's going to get 22 rejections.
Probably won't.
What's that?
I said, if I haven't yet, I probably won't.
Right. But I would look for the ones where you get to, I haven't really met you, but you seem like a very personable person, and that would be a strength for you. Yeah. And to be engaged in those where you can be in front of people. So my thought.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing right now, I mean, it's good news, bad news. It's a founder's world market right now. I mean, there's so much money available out there, right? It's crazy how much money is available. If raising is something that you're interested in doing. I mean, it's just, the big thing is you just can't get ahead of yourself, because there's just so many people pitching investors, and especially in the Zoom world that we live in right now. Investors before would only meet with a couple people a day, and now they can meet with 8 people, more than 8 people in 8 hours, because they give everyone 30 minutes. I mean, they're meeting with at least 15 a day, and there's that many people to keep them busy. And Twitter is just an amazing thing. If you're not on Twitter, working a network that way, I mean, and I know Shakir and Gary and Connor are probably tired of hearing this story, but I will say, I mean, like the biggest win that I had was on Twitter, because I reached out to Jason. So I mentioned Jason Calacanis' name, and he's like the most successful angel investor in the world. Like I said, he was number 3 person to invest in Uber, the number 1 person to invest in Robinhood. He was the first person to invest in Calm, the meditation app. I mean, he has 8 different unicorns under his belt, which is $1 billion company. He has the largest angel syndicate in the world as well. He put something out on Twitter saying, hey, buy my book. If you do, then I'll add you to a private Twitter list. I did. Next thing you know, I'm on a private list. And then he sends me a direct message asking me to do a book review for his book. And so I asked him the question, hey, I told him, hey, this is what I do. I'd love to have you come to Start Peninsula. And 3 years ago, he flew from Silicon Valley to Newport News, and we had him at Start Peninsula. We had 7 companies pitch to him. He made offers to 5 of those companies. We stayed in contact, and now I'm part of his angel syndicate. So I was on his remote demo day today, and now we have direct access to Jason. So it's like, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, it's just so you miss every shot you don't take. And with people, I'm like, I don't know. And Connor knows this. I mean, it's just, I will always try to find a way to get in the side door or get in through the back channels as opposed to knocking on the front door, because it just takes too long. I mean, you're like right now to try to get an adjacent syndicate. I mean, they're getting 100 applications a day, he said. Whereas now we can just slip something in and we're